My name is Sovereign Tale. I am the senior historian of the Volkai Eternal Archive, keeper of 4,000 years of galactic records, and the only living scholar who has read the full, unredacted testimony of Commander Reth Vol, the single survivor of Admiral Dren's war fleet. What I am about to tell you has been classified by the Volkai High Council for 11 years. They classified it not because it was too violent, not because it was too embarrassing. They classified it because it was too frightening. What happened in Sector 7, near the dying star your maps call Orin's grave, was not a battle. It was not an ambush. It was not even a war. It was something the galaxy had never seen before and has not been able to name since. 140 warships entered that sector. One escape pod came out, and inside that pod was a soldier who had seen things that made him stop speaking for 6 months. Ready to understand what the galaxy discovered about humans? Let's begin. The disappearance. The date was the 14th cycle of the Volkai Standard Year 4419. Admiral Dren's fleet, formerly designated Sovereign Strike Armada 7, informally called the Iron Tide, departed Council space on a mission that was not supposed to exist. The mission had no public record, no official announcement, no memorial ceremony planned for its soldiers. It was, in the language of the High Council, a sanitation operation. Clean, quiet, final. 140 warships, 60,000 soldiers, the finest military hardware the Volkai civilization had produced in 2 centuries. Admiral Dren himself was considered the greatest military mind alive, a 4-star commander who had never lost a campaign, never retreated from a single engagement, and had once dismantled an entire rebel coalition using nothing but strategic positioning and patience. He was not a man who made mistakes. He was not a fleet that could simply vanish. And yet, 17 months after departure, the Iron Tide had not reported in. Not once. Not a single pulse signal, not a routine coordinate update, not a distress beacon. 140 ships and 60,000 soldiers had entered the darkness of Sector 7 and produced nothing. No wreckage drifted back into Council space. No energy signatures were detected near Orin's grave. No Allied patrol ships found debris fields, weapon residue, or the chemical signature of mass casualties. There was simply nothing, as if the Iron Tide had sailed off the edge of the known universe and ceased to exist. The Council's first assumption was equipment failure. Their second assumption was an ambush by a rival civilization, perhaps the Crethi Dominion, who had long contested Sector 7's boundary lines. Their third assumption, whispered only in private chambers and never recorded, was that something had gone wrong with the mission itself, that the humans had somehow, impossibly, laughably, impossibly, done something. The Council did not pursue that third assumption, not publicly, not yet. They would not have a choice for long. Who were the humans? Let me tell you what we knew about humanity before all of this. I want you to understand exactly how little we thought of them, because that ignorance is the foundation of everything that followed. Humans are native to a small, rocky planet in an unremarkable solar system on the outer edge of a mid-sized spiral galaxy. Their planet, which they call Earth, is the third from their sun, a pleasant enough world, mostly water, with a thin atmosphere and an extraordinary variety of biological life. The humans themselves are a mammalian species, warm-blooded, bilaterally symmetrical. An average lifespan of roughly 70 to 80 of their planet's years, which translates to approximately 42 Volkai standard cycles. To put that in perspective, I have archival scrolls older than the entire recorded history of human civilization. They had only recently, by galactic standards, discovered fire. They had possessed interstellar travel theory for less than 2 centuries. They had not yet built a single ship capable of leaving their own solar system without assistance. In the galactic community's collective assessment, humanity ranked as a Class 3 emerging species, curious, energetic, and biologically impressive in their adaptability, but fundamentally no more threatening than the Lurin of Sector 12, who had also been quietly scheduled for preventive elimination before developing further. The Volcae High Council had been monitoring Earth for approximately 400 years. In that time, humans had managed to divide themselves into hundreds of competing political units, fight two catastrophic global wars using only primitive chemical and mechanical weapons, nearly destroy their own atmosphere through industrial pollution, and somehow, despite all of that, continue not only surviving but increasing in population, technological capacity, and territorial ambition at a rate that made the Council deeply uncomfortable. That last part was the reason for the mission, not what humans had done, what they were clearly about to do. The Council's projections showed that within 3 to 4 centuries, humanity would achieve reliable interstellar travel. Within 5 centuries, they would begin colonization of neighboring systems. Within 8 centuries, given their reproductive rate, their resource consumption patterns, and their historically aggressive response to competition, they would represent a genuine military threat to established galactic civilizations. The mathematics were straightforward. The solution, in the Council's estimation, was equally straightforward. Remove them now, quietly, before they became the problem the projections said they would become. Nobody on the Council lost sleep over this decision. Humans were not members of the Galactic Accord. They had no seat at any council, no diplomatic representation, no allies among the recognized civilizations. They were, officially, not yet relevant. Eliminating them was, legally speaking, no different from clearing an uninhabited asteroid from a planned shipping lane. This is what we believed. I want you to remember that, because in approximately 400 words, I am going to tell you what Admiral Dren discovered, and I want the contrast to sit with you the way it has sat with me for 11 years. What the fleet was sent to do. Admiral Dren received his orders in a sealed chamber on the 4th level of the High Council's military wing, attended only by 3 senior counselors and the fleet's chief operations officer, Commander Reth Vol. The orders were simple. Travel to Sector 7. Approach Earth along the dark side vector, the approach path that kept the fleet behind the planet's moon for maximum concealment. Deploy the full strike array. Execute total surface neutralization in a single coordinated strike lasting no more than 6 hours. Confirm biological elimination. Return. The operation was designed to be invisible. Humans had no deep space detection equipment capable of identifying a fleet at the distance Dren would maintain during approach. They had no weapons capable of reaching beyond their own atmosphere with any meaningful force. They had no allies to call upon, no warning systems connected to any galactic network, and no knowledge that the Volcae even existed. As far as the Council was concerned, this was not a military operation. It was a procedure. The kind of thing a civilization does to protect its future, quietly and without ceremony, the way a gardener removes a weed before it spreads. Dren himself reportedly expressed no hesitation. He reviewed the mission parameters, asked 2 logistical questions about resupply coordinates, confirmed his departure timeline, and left the chamber. Commander Vol, who would later be the only person to survive and tell us what happened, recorded in his personal log that the Admiral seemed almost bored by the assignment. 140 warships against a species that had not yet left its own solar system. It was, in Dren's own words, an administrative errand. They departed on schedule. They maintained communication silence as ordered to prevent any signal from being traced back to Council space. They followed the dark side vector approach perfectly. Every tactical parameter was executed with a precision that had made Dren a legend. And then, somewhere in the darkness between the outer planets of the human solar system and the third rock from the sun, something began to go wrong. Not explosively, not immediately. The way things go wrong when the enemy already knows you are coming, has known for a long time, and has spent that time not preparing weapons but preparing something far more specific. Something designed not for your fleet, something designed for your mind. The first contact signal. 17 months of silence. And then, on a quiet morning in the Council's communications center, a low-frequency distress beacon activated somewhere in the outer boundary of Sector 7. The signal was weak, damaged, barely readable, but the identification code was unmistakable. It belonged to Volkai Escape Pod 7 Alpha, assigned to Admiral Dren's flagship, the sovereign warship Eternal Dominion. Recovery ships reached the pod in 9 days. What they found inside was a single surviving soldier. Commander Reth Vol, 43 years old, 11-year decorated veteran, former chief operations officer of the most powerful war fleet the Volkai had assembled in 2 centuries. He was alive. Physically, aside from dehydration and the particular kind of muscle deterioration that comes from extended low-gravity confinement, he was uninjured. Not a scratch, not a burn mark, not a single wound from any conventional weapon. He did not speak when they found him. He was conscious. His eyes were open and tracking movement. He responded to physical contact and demonstrated clear cognitive function in basic response tests. He simply did not speak. The medical team noted in their report that he did not appear to be in shock in any clinical sense. He appeared, in the words of the attending physician, to be thinking. Very carefully and very slowly, the way a person thinks when they are deciding how to explain something that they are not certain anyone will believe. He did not speak for 6 months. When he finally did speak, he asked for the senior historian of the Eternal Archive. He did not ask for a military debriefer. He did not ask for a counselor, a psychologist, or a fellow soldier. He asked for a historian, because what he had to say was not a military report. It was, in his words, a record. Something that needed to be kept exactly as it happened, without interpretation, without redaction, and without the particular kind of institutional distortion that tends to occur when the military tries to explain its own catastrophic failures. They sent me. I sat with Reth Vol for 31 days. I recorded every word. What follows is what he told me, reconstructed in the sequence I was able to verify through cross-referencing his testimony with recovered sensor fragments, partial communication logs, and the 3 secondary accounts provided by automated systems aboard the escape pod itself. I have not softened it. I was asked to, I refused. What actually happened? The fleet dropped from transit speed approximately 4 million kilometers from the outer edge of the human solar system, precisely on schedule and precisely on the dark side vector as planned. All 140 ships confirmed operational status. All weapon systems were primed. All crews were at standard readiness stations. Admiral Dren conducted a final systems review, confirmed mission parameters with his senior officers, and gave the order to begin the slow approach. They traveled in formation silence for 11 hours. No anomalies, no detections. Nothing from the human's primitive sensor network suggested any awareness of the fleet's presence. Everything was proceeding exactly as designed. Then, at hour 11, a single human vessel appeared on long-range sensors. A single ship, small by any military standard, approximately the size of a Volkai mid-range courier vessel which carries a crew of 8. It was not moving to intercept. It was not moving away. It was simply sitting there at a distance of roughly 2 million kilometers from the fleet's leading edge, directly in the path of the approach vector. Directly in the path, not off to the side, not at an angle, directly in the center of the lane the Iron Tide was using. Dren's first assessment was coincidence, a human research or mining vessel that happened to be in the wrong place. He ordered the fleet to adjust heading by 3 degrees, a minor deviation that would take them around the human ship with a comfortable margin. The adjustment was made. The fleet continued. 40 minutes later, the human ship had adjusted its own position. It was directly in front of them again. Dren ordered a second course correction, larger this time, 12 degrees, enough to put significant distance between the fleet and the human vessel. The fleet adjusted, continued forward. 50 minutes later, the human ship was in front of them again. Vol told me that this was the moment Admiral Dren first went quiet. Not worried, not alarmed. Quiet in the specific way that experienced commanders go quiet when a situation has produced a data point that does not fit any known category. The human ship had no business knowing the fleet was there. It had no sensors capable of detecting them at that range. It should not have been able to track course corrections executed in the silent dark of deep space, and yet it was tracking them. Perfectly, without apparent effort. Dren ordered a full stop. The fleet halted. The human ship halted. Then it began to transmit. The psychological weapon. What the human ship transmitted was not a distress signal. It was not a diplomatic greeting. It was not a threat or a declaration of war. What it transmitted in clear Volkai standard language, a language humans were not supposed to know existed, was a single audio file, approximately 9 minutes long, and it was a recording. A recording of the High Council's closed chamber meeting, the one where Admiral Dren had received his orders, the one attended by 3 senior counselors and Commander Vol in a sealed room on the 4th level of the Council's military wing, a meeting that had taken place with every available security measure active, in a facility that had never been successfully penetrated by any known intelligence operation in 400 years of Volkai history. Dren listened to the entire recording in silence. When it ended, he asked his communications officer to confirm the signal's origin point. The answer came back, the human ship. Then he asked his intelligence officer how long humans had known about the Volkai. The intelligence officer had no answer. The transmission ended, and then the human ship simply turned around and began flying back toward the inner solar system, slowly, without any apparent urgency, as if it had done what it came to do and was now heading home for dinner. This, Vol told me, was the first weapon. Not a gun, not a missile, a demonstration. Proof, delivered quietly and without aggression, that the humans knew everything, that they had known for some time, that the sealed room was not sealed, that the dark side vector was not dark, that the administrative errand had been anticipated, prepared for, and allowed to approach. The word allowed is the one that kept Vol awake for 6 months in that escape pod. Dren ordered a command staff meeting. The senior officers gathered in the flagship's war room, and the admiral presented 3 possibilities. First, the transmission was fabricated, a bluff designed to create psychological destabilization without any real intelligence behind it. Second, humans had a single source inside council space, a limited breach that provided them with the meeting recording but nothing more. Third, human intelligence capabilities were so far beyond what the Volkai had assessed that the entire mission was compromised at a fundamental level. The debate lasted 4 hours. During those 4 hours, 14 additional human ships appeared on sensors, not in front of the fleet, not approaching in any attack formation. They appeared on the sides, above, below, surrounding the fleet at a distance of approximately 800,000 kilometers in every direction. 14 small ships, each roughly the same size as the first, none of them moving, all of them simply present. Watching. When the sensor report came in, Dren stopped the debate. He sat for a moment. Then he said, according to Vol's direct recollection, "They surrounded us while we were talking. Calculate how long it took them to reach those positions." The calculation came back in minutes. The answer was that the 14 ships had to have been in motion before the command staff meeting began, before the first course correction, before the fleet even detected the first human ship. They had not reacted to the fleet's position. They had predicted it. Dren ordered a combat readiness upgrade to full alert status. Weapons hot, shields active. He sent a targeted strike order for the original human vessel, the one that had transmitted the recording, now heading back toward the inner system. 42 fighters launched from the fleet's carrier wings and pursued. They caught up with the human ship in 30 minutes, and then, at a distance of approximately 10,000 kilometers, the human ship stopped. Just stopped, and transmitted again. This time the transmission was not a recording. It was live. A single human male, middle-aged by their species standards, sitting in what appeared to be a very ordinary chair, on what appeared to be a very ordinary ship, drinking what Vol identified from his cultural database as a warm beverage. The man looked directly at the transmission sensor. He smiled. He raised the cup in a small gesture that the cultural database identified as a casual, friendly salute. And he said, in perfect Volkai standard, "We've been waiting for you. You should call off your fighters, not because we're threatening you, because of what's behind them." The 42 fighters turned around. Behind the fighters, between them and the fleet, space had changed. The darkness that should have been empty was not empty anymore. Vol told me he did not have adequate language for what the sensors showed. He eventually settled on this description. It looked as though the dark itself had opened its eyes. Hundreds of energy signatures had activated simultaneously, at distances ranging from 200,000 kilometers to less than 50,000 kilometers from the fleet's position. Not ships, exactly. Not in any configuration the Volkai recognition systems could classify. Something older. Something that had been sitting in that darkness for a very long time, completely undetectable, completely silent, waiting with a patience that did not feel mechanical. Waiting the way living things wait when they are very, very good at it. The Iron Tide was surrounded, not by the 14 small ships. Those, Vol came to understand, were the messengers, the speakers. What surrounded the fleet was something the humans had spent the better part of a century building, piece by piece, component by component, in the darkness of their own outer solar system. A weapons installation that did not move, did not emit, did not announce itself. That simply existed in the cold and the silence and waited for the thing it had been built to wait for. They had been building it since the first time a Volkai survey drone had entered their solar system and been detected. 400 years of council monitoring. 400 years of thinking humans did not know they were being watched. They had known within the first decade, and they had spent the remaining 390 years building an answer in the dark where nobody was looking, because everyone had already decided there was nothing there worth looking at. The galaxy reacts. Dren did not give a surrender order. Vol was clear about this. The Admiral was not a man capable of that word. What he gave, after 47 minutes of complete silence in the war room, was a stand-down order. Weapons cold, shields to minimum, engines to hold position. And then he opened a communication channel to the human vessel and spoke 4 words that Commander Vol described as the most expensive 4 words in Volkai military history. "What do you want?" The human man with the warm beverage set down his cup. He reached off-screen and produced a document, a physical document, printed on what appeared to be actual paper, which Vol noted with some bewilderment was a medium humans were supposedly abandoning in favor of digital formats. The man held it up to the sensor. It was a treaty, 47 pages, pre-written, already signed on the human side by 17 different political authorities from 11 different nations on Earth. They had written it years ago. They had been ready to present it the moment the fleet arrived. Vol told me that when the translation came through and the war room staff understood what they were reading, there was a sound in that room that he had never heard from Volkai military personnel before. He struggled to describe it. He finally said it was the sound of 60 people simultaneously understanding that they were not the most dangerous ones in the room. That the species they had come to erase had outthought them at every single step, from the surveillance detection 4 centuries ago to the treaty that was already printed and signed before the fleet had even departed council space. The treaty was not aggressive. It was not a list of demands from a victor to a defeated enemy. It was, in every structural sense, a diplomatic proposal. Recognition of Earth as a sovereign protected world under its own terms, a mutual non-interference agreement with teeth on both sides, trade and information protocols. And one final clause, listed at the very end of the 47th page, written in slightly larger text than everything else, which Vol read to me from memory, because it was the sentence he had been unable to stop thinking about for 11 years. The clause read, "The undersigned human authorities wish to make clear that this treaty is offered not from weakness but from preference. We are not interested in war. We are interested in neighbors. We invite the Volcae to choose the same." Dren signed. He had no other real option, and he was intelligent enough to know it. But Vol told me the Admiral's hand did not shake when he signed. He signed with the same calm steadiness with which he had done everything in his career. And when it was done, he looked at the document for a long moment, and then he said, to no one in particular, quietly and almost to himself, "They let us come all the way here." Meaning, they could have stopped the mission before it started. They could have sent a message to Council Space, could have made contact, could have demonstrated their capabilities without waiting for the fleet to arrive. Instead, they had let 140 warships travel all the way to the edge of their solar system. They had let the approach happen. They had let the course corrections happen, and the command staff meeting happen, and the 42 fighters launch and return. They had let the entire sequence play out, every step of it, with full control over how and when it ended. They wanted the fleet to arrive. They wanted the Admiral himself to be there, in person, in command, when the lights came on in the dark. Because a treaty signed under those conditions by that man carried a weight that no diplomatic message transmitted across light years of empty space ever could. Dren knew what had surrounded him. Dren knew what the alternative was. When Dren signed, every civilization that eventually received Vol's testimony would know exactly what Dren had seen before he put his mark on that page. The humans had not just built a weapons installation. They had built a story about what happens when you come for them, and they had made sure the most credible possible witness survived to carry it back. One escape pod, one survivor, the same survivor who had attended the original sealed meeting and could verify the recording. The same survivor who had the rank and the record to make his testimony impossible to dismiss. Vol had been kept safe the entire time. He was never in danger. He just did not know that until the very end, when the human man with the warm beverage looked at the sensor one final time before signing off and said, with the same casual friendliness he had shown throughout, "Commander Vol, your pod is prepped and ready at Base 7. We've programmed the return coordinates. Thank you for coming. Safe travels." They knew his name. Of course they knew his name. The warning left behind. Vol spent 9 days in the escape pod before the recovery ships reached him. He spent those 9 days reading the full text of the treaty. A copy had been loaded onto the pod's data system, along with a complete record of all sensor data from the encounter, authenticated and time-stamped, compiled in a format perfectly suited for Volcae archival standards. Someone had prepared that archive package with detailed knowledge of exactly how Volcae historians organize and verify records. He also found, in a small physical compartment beneath the pod's navigation console, a single item that had not been included in any standard escape pod manifest: a paper card, human-made, clearly, printed in both Volcae standard script and what he recognized from cultural databases as one of the major human-written languages. The Volcae text read, simply, "Tell them the ones in the dark are still there." Vol gave me the card. I have it in the archive now in a sealed preservation case on the 3rd level. I have looked at it many times over 11 years. I have thought about it the way you think about something that is both a warning and an invitation, a statement of capability and simultaneously a demonstration of restraint. They built what they built and they let it stay in the dark. They did not move it forward. They did not expand its range. They did not follow the fleet home. They simply let it remain where it was, in the outer dark of their solar system, present and unannounced, and asked us to remember that it was there. 3 civilizations, the Crethi Dominion, the Selvari Collective, and the Huron Empire, had independent operations either planned or in early motion targeting Earth at the time Vol's testimony became known. All 3 operations were discontinued within 60 days of the testimony's distribution. No official explanation was given by any of the three governments. None was needed. The Volkai High Council classified the full record 11 years ago. The official position is that the mission encountered unforeseen complications and was recalled. There is no mention of the treaty in any public council document. There is no mention of Dren's stand-down order, the surrounding installation, the pre-signed document, or the card found in the escape pod. But the treaty is active. I have confirmed this personally. Its terms have been honored without exception on both sides for 11 years. Earth continues its development on its own timeline, unbothered, unmonitored, or at least unmonitored by anyone who has read Vol's account and retained the basic survival instinct common to most advanced species. Dren retired from military service 14 months after the mission. He gave no interviews, accepted no commendations for the mission's official cover story, and according to what I have been able to determine, spent the remainder of his career writing privately. I was able to obtain one fragment of his private writing through a source I will not name. It was a single paragraph, undated, and it said this: I have commanded forces against the Crethi, the Selvari, the Huron, and 11 lesser civilizations. I have never lost. I did not lose at Sector 7 either, because losing requires being in a contest. I was never in a contest. I arrived at a demonstration that had been prepared for me, walked through it on a path they had laid, and left carrying exactly the message they wanted delivered. Every step from departure to return was theirs. I was the messenger. I just didn't know it. Sovereign Tale, Senior Historian, Volkai Eternal Archive, year 4430. Standard classification requested. Permanent open record. Let whoever comes after understand what was here before them. Let them read this and decide, carefully and without arrogance, what kind of neighbor they intend to be. The ones in the dark are still there.